Hey friends, it's Laura with Laura B Floss Tube. Welcome or welcome back. I'm so glad you joined me today. We are going to be discussing my favorite quilting and crafting tools today. And this is definitely not going to be a comprehensive list. This is just like my top 20 to 22 that I quickly grabbed and thought, yeah, I could not live without this or this or this or this. And then all of a sudden I had 20 some items and I was like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of things that I think that I need. I do think sometimes it's helpful to hear what other people use and why they like those items. So I'm going to give you the rundown really quickly, but I'm going to start with number one being my most valued quilting tool ever. All right, so what do you think number one is going to be? Well, I'm going to give you a hint. I could not live without my Juki. Oh my goodness. I have a Juki DX7. It is amazing. I love it so much. I obviously use it for everything. I do the piecing, I do the binding, and sometimes I even do the quilting with it. So I love my Juki. It is great. It has lasted me 4 years without any issues so far. The only problem I've had with it is I had a lot of lint buildup in my foot pedal. My husband took it apart and cleaned it all up for me and put it back together, and it's been running like a champ ever since. I have had it into service a couple times. I hate giving up my Juki though, because when I don't have my Juki, that means I don't have my main machine to play with. But you know, servicing is important occasionally. So if you're in the market for a new sewing machine, let me just show you a little bit more about my Juki. I know you see it in each of my videos, but it might be good just to kind of give a little brief overview. All right, so as you can see up here in the lid, there's a ton of different stitches that it will do. I don't remember the number exactly of how many different stitches, but it does plenty plus more for what I need. It is a really nice LED screen over here, and it is electronic, so I have tons and tons of stitches to choose from. A couple features that I really love about it is that one, I have a button over here that I can just tell it to float. And basically what that does is it just moves a little less pressure off of my presser foot, and it allows me to go through bulkier stuff, and it kind of floats over the items. The other thing that is super cool is that when you want to just turn it into a straight stitch machine, you can do that with just the flip of a little lever. There's a lever right here and with the bobbin case, and it moves a little plate right there, so it turns it into a straight stitch machine, and your needle will go perfectly straight the whole time without any wiggle. That's really fun and helpful if you're doing piecing with your machine. So let's see what else. Oh, the one additional accessory I guess that I got from my Juki was the thread stand, and on the back of the machine it will hold the cones of thread. Let me turn you around over there so you can see this. So right back here, this is an attachment that you put onto the machine, and that way I can use the big cones for thread. And then it has the thread stand that goes up, 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 and you thread it through and just thread through the machine as normal after that. But it really kind of helps because then you don't have to use just the little spools, you can use the great big spools of thread as well. So the rest of my items I have kind of in a pile beside me, and we're just going to grab items and go through them one at a time. I do have links to all of these items down in the description box below. There's a few different sites that I referenced to get them, just depending on what the item was. Most of the stuff you can get on Amazon. A few of the other things are specialties with quilt shops and online retailers. So first up, oh my goodness, I love the spray misters. So I keep my starch in this, and then I can just squeeze the trigger and it sprays out a fine mist of starch all over my item that I'm pressing. And I love this because I don't have to like do the little pumpy thing, and I just love the mister. It's really nice, and it is used every time I press. So what's in my mister is Mary Ellen's Best Press. I love Best Press. So this is one of the small bottles that I have. I typically buy this in the gallon jugs and just refill my mister as needed. So if you're looking for Best Press and in this size at a reasonable price, if you have a Menards near you, that is definitely the best price you will find on the market for this size of the Best Press. They have it for like $4.50 a bottle, whereas I think at Joann's it's around $8 or $9 a bottle. So yeah, definitely a cost saving there. Okay, so let's talk thread. The thread I use on my machine, both on top and bottom in the bobbin case, is Cerakote Silk Finish Cotton Thread. I buy this in the cones. I actually just get it off of Amazon. I know that you can get this in some quilt shops. So, you know, just check around, check your prices, and obviously go with the one that's best priced, right? Usually I like to run either a off-white or a light silver like this, because then no matter what color I am piecing, it just kind of blends in with all of those fabrics. All right, next up is where all my other little gadgets for the most part that I'm going to share with you are at. I love these project boxes. I put all of my quilt kits in these project boxes when I start working on them, and it keeps everything nice and tidy. Everything's in one place. I mean, sometimes I use 2 of them depending on the size of the quilt project, but I love having them in here because it's just easy to grab and put on the table and start cutting or sewing or whatever I'm doing with that project. So I have a link to these below again. They're basically the 12 by 12 iris project keepers. I had these originally for scrapbooking, but then once I started quilting more, I was like, oh my gosh, these are where it's at. I love having these just to keep my projects organized and handy. So I have a zippered pouch where I store all of my binding clips. These are not name brand clips. I bought these clips on Amazon. The link is down below. They work really great. If I break one that I'm not like really sad, they come in like sets of 100 or 150. It's ridiculous. You can get a whole bunch of them too. But these are amazing. I like them when I'm doing my project bags. I also like them when I'm putting on binding. I also like them to clip pieces together when I am sorting for quilt blocks. I use them all the time. Anytime that I want to clip something that I don't want to pin necessarily, the binding clips are where it's at. Let's see. Let's talk needles for a second. I use 2 different types of needles depending on what I'm doing. I either use Schmetz Microtex, which I use these for most of my piecing and sewing. I really like them because they're like a really fine tipped needle that will go through anything. They're super sharp and super durable. If I'm doing binding where I'm going through lots of layers, or I'm sewing on something that's a little heavier weight like a denim or a leather, then I like to use the Schmetz Universal needle. They're just a little thicker needle, and they hold up really well because I tend to pull and tug a little bit when I'm sewing, but I haven't had a problem with them. I mean, occasionally when I get really crazy with it, then I will have a problem with breaking a needle, but for the most part, these hold up great. You can get these on Amazon. I usually buy them when they're like a pack of 10, so you get like 10 of these cards and you can save some money, and they're great needles. Love them. All right, so this next item is not a quilting item, but I use it in my quilting room for things all the time. I got this big bag of knit ponytail holders because I love putting them around my thread spools to hold the threads in place. I have a great big tote that has a ton of different colors of thread in it, and rather than just having them rolling around loose in there with threads going everywhere, I throw one of these little ponytail holders around them. It keeps the thread down, and when I grab them out, I don't have to worry about a trailing thread behind me. Ponytail holders, amazing. Okay, scissors. I have 2 different types of scissors that I use primarily in my quilting. I have 2 different types of scissors that I use primarily for quilting. I have my great big scissors. They're a Fiskars brand, and it is a part of the Pro Series. I love these scissors. You can get them sharpened, so they're really great. They will hold up for a long time. And then in addition to that, I love these little scissors. They have a super fine point. They're great for when I need to cut open some interfacing on the back of an applique, or when I have to clip into some curves, or whatever I'm doing. These little scissors are amazing. They're also by Fiskars. Love them. Clover has this. It's a 2-point turner. It's really cool because you can run this around the edge of your applique items to like smooth out that seam, and you also have this little point on this end that you can poke in and get the little points of leaves or little diamonds or whatever you're doing. You can poke out the points and you can smooth the edges. it actually stays in the bowl by my machine all the time, just in case I need it. Another thing that's in the bowl is the purple thing, and that's its name. It's a purple thing, and I love this. I don't use it as much for quilting as I do for some other things. If you see that slot in there, I had to put some elastic in a waistband of a skirt not too long ago. So I ran the elastic through that slot, sewed it into place, and this just goes right through the casing to run your elastic through the waist of the skirt in this instance. It is amazing, and they come in like, you know, packs of 1 to 10 depending, and I think they actually have other colors now too, but it's really durable. It actually holds up a lot better than you would think, and you can do so many things with this. I also like to use it on my sewing machine to like kind of use it for like a stiletto to poke things in rather than your finger. It's much easier to use this and a lot safer. I know you've seen me use this, so let's just talk about it for a minute. I love my double-ended seam ripper and stiletto. This was handmade. I'll put a link to the Etsy shop below. I love this tool. It's amazing. So one end is a stiletto, which is a really fine little point. The other end is a seam ripper. These come in 2 different sizes. You can get, this is like the regular size, and you can get a large size as well. You can get refills from these, and the guy that I bought this from has the refills in his Etsy shop as well. So it's really easy, and it's really easy to find replacement pieces, because if you did not know this, occasionally you do need to replace your seam ripper because that little blade does get dull and you won't be seam ripping as well as you used to. Underneath my sewing extension table on my sewing machine, I have a couple boxes of pens, and I use them for different things. I first have the Riley Blake Bluebird pens. So these pens are pretty long and they're thin. So I like these for when I'm putting the borders on my quilts. It's really easy to slip these through, and it will hold pretty far into the quilt side because of the length of the needle, and it's really thin, so I don't have to worry about it, you know, leaving big holes in my fabric afterwards. The other pens you see me using all the time is a Quilter Select. These come in the magnetic pen tin. I love these pens. They are glass-headed pens. That's what I probably love most about them, because if I have something that I need to press, I don't have to worry about them melting underneath my iron. So you can put these in and hold your pieces together and iron without. All right, let's talk about the rulers. Oh my goodness, I am obsessed with Quilter Select rulers. They are the best rulers on the market, in my opinion. I have a ton of different sizes, but let me show you the 5 that I use the most. First and foremost, I use the 3 by 12 inch ruler, probably more than any other ruler that I have. I love the width, I love the length. It works great when I'm cutting out blocks because for the most part, I can get all of my cuts that I need out of this. It works great with fat quarters. It also works great with yardage if you're folding it in half. The other ruler that I use all the time is my 3 by 18 inch ruler. And this one I use so much when I'm cutting yardage and cutting those fat quarters and different things. And I also use it for when I'm squaring up blocks. Yeah, I love the 3 by 18. When I'm cutting out a lot of things for a quilt, especially borders and width of fabric, I grab my 6 by 24 Quilter Select ruler. It is so good and it's so accurate. I love this ruler so much. I can run my blade right across, right along the edge. It gives it a really great cut, and you can see through it a little bit, so you can see where your fabric's at. You can make the grid lines are all written on or printed on really accurately. And the other thing that I love about all the Quilter Select rulers is that they have this kind of a coating on the back of them. It's kind of like a non-slip coating, so you don't have to worry about them sliding all over the place like some of the other brands do. So as far as smaller rulers from Quilter Select, the 2 that I grab most is the 5-inch square, and mostly because if I have scraps left over, I'm cutting them down into 5-inch squares because I use that scrap size for so many different blocks. So I grab my 5-inch square, I can put it right on the fabric, cut all the way around it, and go on to the next cut. The other size I use for the same reason is a 2.5-inch square. Now, you might be thinking, well, you could just use the 5-inch square and move it over. You can, but sometimes you want a fussy cut. And this is so easy to be able to put it on your fabric, fussy cut around and get the exact image you want, get the exact size you need, and these are great little rulers. I also love these when I'm cutting jelly roll strips because then I don't have to keep remembering where the 2.5 inch mark is on this. I can just move it right over, right on down that jelly roll strip. While we're on the Quilter Select bandwagon, let's talk about my rotary cutter. People ask me about this all of the time. I do have a Quilter Select rotary cutter. This is the 45 millimeters size. They do come in a 60 millimeter, and I believe they have a smaller one as well. This is definitely a weighted rotary cutter. There's some weight to it. It helps when you're cutting through many layers of fabric. It's also ambidextrous. You can move the blade either way. So if you're left-handed or right-handed, or if you're cutting on either side of the ruler, you can move it back either way. The only thing that I would caution you about the Quilter Select rotary cutter is that it does take a little practice to get this shut each time. There isn't like a stop point in the middle that like clicks it back into place, and it definitely does not automatically shut like some of the other brands do. But the weight and just the ease of use and the comfort in my hand makes up for all of the negative that I could possibly be bringing up about this rotary cutter. Love this tool so much. All right, we are getting there. So one of the other things, and I know that there is definitely a name brand on the market that has all of these, but I wanted all of the sizes of the binding makers, the binding tools. So I bought this set on Amazon. I have a link down in the description box. These have worked well for me. They held up really well. They're accurate. They're I really feel like they're probably just as good. I think they were probably 1/3 of the cost. So anytime you can save a little money, I am totally in for that. It does come with this nice little tool. So if you need to get the fabric piece through the tool, you have this. And I think it came with a couple like little bobbins or something. I'm not really sure. It did come with this little foot as well that will work on most of your sewing machines. I have not ever used it, so I can't really say if it works or not. But it comes with all the sizes of binding tools that I need, and I love this set. I do have my little cheat sheet up here that tells me which color is which size, and that way I know which one I'm grabbing for the different binding strips that I'm making, or yeah, for the different bias tape, for the different bias tape sizes that I'm making, especially for Lori Holt quilts. She has a lot of bias tape in her designs. So again, this is a set of bias tape makers. Okay, you've seen me use this several times in my videos, especially with the Bloom quilt along and some of the applique quilts. When you're turning out long, skinny shapes, this is your friend. Oh my goodness. This is the Turn It All tool. There's 3 different sizes. They're super simple to use. The directions are right on the back on the card. I just keep them in here because that way I know where they're at. I know that all of them are in there, and I have the directions right here on how to use it in case I forget. But it's super easy. You make your tube, you sew across the end, you drop in the little piece of PVC, and then you push through with the wooden dowel or the metal rod, depending on the size that you're doing, and it turns out those long skinny shapes so quickly you'll be amazed every single time. So if you do like bags or even some applique shapes that are long and skinny and they're kind of a pain in the butt to get turned out, this thing will save you so much time and so much anguish. Make sure you check this out. Link in the description box below. All right, we are almost there. I have two more things. I'm sorry. I have 2 more things that I want to share with you that I love and have in my sewing room. First thing is the design boards. I love design boards. If you have not used a design board or you're not really sure what to do with them, this is what you do with them. If you are laying out a block, if you're like me, sometimes I forget which piece goes where, especially when there's angles involved. So you can lay out your pieces on the design board. Mine are with a little bit of a fleece, not the batting, but a fleece, and it sticks perfectly. It's just kind of like the little flannel boards that we had when we were kids to do little projects and little stories on. I don't know. I had them. They were around in Sunday school. But Basically the same concept. You use them just to lay out your blocks. I love to have them by my sewing machine so I can lay out my block and grab the pieces as I need them. You get the foam core board, and you can make them in whatever size you want. I have some that fit inside my project boxes, which is amazing for when I'm sorting out my blocks to make for a large quilt. I can clip them together, put them on the design board, and then I can just grab that board out to sew all my pieces instead of having to rummage around inside of a box with loose pieces around. The last thing I'll just swing, two more things, sorry, is my vintage iron. Love this thing. It has a flat surface and it is shiny and wonderful. This is one of the Durabilt irons. It's the same company that made the featherweight irons, but they don't have the featherweight brand name on it, so they're a little cheaper, but they fold flat for travel. The handle will fold flat, then you can pop it back up, and this locks it into place. You don't want to have to do that when it's hot, though. It's got to be cold when you're messing with the handle, because these pieces up here do all get hot. So, watch your fingers. Remember, it's a vintage iron before the 3,000,002 warning labels were put on everything. You had to have common sense when these were made. So I got this on eBay. You'll just have to look for like a Durabilt folding travel iron, although Singer Featherweight also has a brand out there. They just have their brand stamped on it. But these are vintage. They're, I don't know, 50s maybe, or maybe even older. So, yeah, eBay would be your friend. Last item is my 3-tier rolling cart, and that is not something that you guys probably haven't seen, but I'm going to swing you down so you can see mine, and we'll talk through why I love it. All right, so here's my rolling cart. I just keep all my stuff in there that I'm working on. I have a tray in here that goes with the ironing board. I have my clappers and some extra pens, and my best press is typically in there along with my mister. I also have my Quilter Select Free Fuse in there, which, I'm sure that you've heard me talk about this, but the Quilter Select Free Fuse is another item I love. And then I just have some projects that are in progress. My top bin is full of random things. I really probably need to go through my cart and get it more organized, but I keep this close to my sewing table, so then when I'm sewing on borders or sewing together long rows of quilts, I can use this to kind of take some of the weight off of the machine and give a place for my quilt top to drape, and to give my machine a little less weight on it. So that was kind of a quick rundown through some of my most favorite and loved quilting tools. I hope you enjoyed seeing what I use and why I use it and why I like it. If you are interested in any of the products I mentioned today, you can get all links to all of those in the description box down below. If you have questions, please feel free to leave comments. I respond to those typically within a couple of days. You can find links to all these products down in the description box below. If you have comments or suggestions or questions about any of those, please feel free to leave me a comment on the video. I respond to those within a couple of days. And until next time, I hope you find some time to carve out for creating and crafting, find joy in all you do, and of course, happy stitching.